General Sir Horace Lockwood Smith-Dorrien, GCMG, DSO-ADC, was a senior British Army officer, one of the few British survivors of the Battle of Isandlwana. As a young officer, he also distinguished himself in the Second Boer War. Smith-Dorrien held senior commands in the British Expeditionary Force during the First World War. He commanded Second Corps at the Battle of Mons, the first major action fought by the BEF, and a Battle of Le Cateau, where he fought a vigorous and successful defensive action contrary to the wishes of the Commander-in-Chief Sir John French, with whom he had had a personality clash dating back some years. In the spring of 1915 he commanded the Second Army at the Second Battle of Ypres. He was relieved of command by French for requesting permission to retreat from the Ypres salient to a more defensible position. Early life and career. Horace Smith-Dorrien was born at Haresford, a house near Berkhamsted, to Colonel Robert Algernon Smith-Dorrien and Mary Ann Drever. He was the 12th child of 16. His eldest brother was Thomas Algernon Smith-Dorrien Smith, the Lord Proprietor of the Isles of Scilly from 1872 to 1918. He was educated at Harrow, and on the 26th of February 1876 entered the Royal Military College, Sandhurst. He had hoped to join the 95th Rifle Brigade of Peninsular War fame. After passing out, he was commissioned in 1877 as a subaltern to the 95th Regiment of Foot, later to become the Sherwood Foresters. Zulu War. On the 1st of November 1878, he was posted to South Africa, where he worked as a transport officer. In this role he encountered, and fought against, corruption in the army. Smith-Dorrien was present at the Battle of Isandlwana during the Zulu Wars on the 22nd of January 1879, serving with the British Invasion Force as a transport officer for the Army's Royal Artillery Detachment. As Zulu forces overran the British forces, Smith-Dorrien narrowly escaped on his transport pony over 20 miles of rough terrain with 20 Zulu warriors in hot pursuit, crossing the Buffalo River 80 yards wide and with a strong current by holding the tail of a loose horse. Smith-Dorrien was one of fewer than 50 British survivors of the battle, and one of only 5 Imperial officers to escape the Zulu bloodbath. Because of his conduct in trying to help other soldiers escape from the battlefield, including a colonial commissariat officer named Hammer whose life he saved, he was recommended for a Victoria Cross, but, as the recommendation did not go through the proper channels, he never received it. He took part in the rest of that war. His observations on the difficulty of opening ammunition boxes led to changes in British practice for the rest of the war, though modern commentators argue that this was not as important a factor in the defeat as was thought at the time. Egypt, India and Sudan. Smith-Dorrien served in Egypt under Evelyn Wood. He was promoted captain on 1 April 1882, appointed Assistant Chief of Police in Alexandria on 22 August 1882, then given command of mounted infantry in Egypt on 3 September 1882, and was seconded to the Egyptian army. During this time, he forged a lifelong friendship with the then Major Kitchener. He met Gordon more than once, but his bad knee kept him off the expedition to relieve Khartoum. He served on the Suakin expedition. On 30 December 1885, he witnessed the Battle of Guinness, where the British Army fought in redcoats for the last time. The next day he was given his first independent command, 150 men with 50 infantry in reserve. His task was to capture 9 Arab River supply boats, in order to achieve which he had to exceed his orders by going beyond the village of Serda, making a 60-mile journey on horseback in 24 hours. For this, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Order in 1886. Smith-Dorrien then left active command to go to the Staff College, Camberley. Staff College was not yet much respected, and he later recorded that he devoted much time to sport whilst there. He was posted to India and promoted Major on the 1st of May 1892. He became Deputy Assistant Adjutant General, Bengal, on the 1st of April 1893 and then Assistant Adjutant General, Bengal, on the 27th of October 1894. He returned to his regiment where he commanded troops during the Tirah campaign of 1897–98. In 1898, he transferred back to Egypt. He was promoted Brevet Lieutenant Colonel on the 20th of May 1898 and appointed commanding officer of the 13th Sudanese Battalion. He fought at the Battle of Omdurman, where his infantry fired at dervishes from entrenched positions. He commanded the British troops during the Fashoda incident. He was promoted Brevet Colonel the 16th of November 1898 and commanding officer of the Sherwood Foresters and substantive Lieutenant Colonel. South Africa. On the 31st of October 1899, he shipped to South Africa for the Second Boer War, arriving at Durban the 13th of December 1899, in the middle of Black Week. On the 2nd of February 1900, Lord Roberts put him in command of the 19th Brigade and, on the 11th of February, he was promoted to Major General, making him one of the youngest generals in the British Army at the time. He later commanded a division in South Africa. He provided covering fire for French's cavalry division at Klipsdrift, and played an important role at the Battle of Paardeberg, where he was summoned by Lord Roberts and asked for his views in the presence of Lord Kitchener, French and Henry Colville. He argued for the use of sapping and fire support, rather than attacking the entrenched enemy over open ground. Kitchener followed him to his horse to remonstrate that he would be a made man if he attacked as Kitchener wished, to which he replied he had given his views and would only attack if ordered to do so. A week later he took the laager after careful assault at Sanna's Post. Smith-Dorrien ignored inept orders from Colville to leave wounded largely unprotected and managed an orderly retreat without further casualties. He took part in the Battle of Leliefontein. On the 6th of February 1901, Smith-Dorrien's troops were attacked in the Battle of Chrissy's Mere. Smith-Dorrien's qualities as a commander meant he was one of a very few British commanders to enhance his reputation during this war. Smith-Dorrien was mentioned 3 times in the London Gazette, and Ian Hamilton later wrote highly of his performance and his grasp of the men's morale, whilst Roberts also thought highly of his South Africa performance. He was at the top of a list of 18 successful commanders of columns or groups of columns, including Haig and Allenby, whom French commended to Lord Roberts. India. On the 22nd of April 1901, he received orders to return to India, where he was made Adjutant General under Kitchener. He was placed in command of the 4th Division in Balochistan, a post he held from the 30th of June 1903 until 1907. He was raised to Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath in 1904 and promoted Lieutenant General on the 9th of April 1906. He introduced the staff right, erroneously attributed by Terrain to Haig. He also helped found the Staff College at Quetta in 1907. In the dispute between Kitchener and Lord Curzon over the role of the military member, Smith-Dorrien stayed neutral, torn between his relations with Kitchener and with the military member himself, Sir Arthur Power Palmer. Home postings. Aldershot Smith-Dorrien returned to England and, on 1 December 1907, became GOC of the Aldershot Command. During this time, he instituted a number of reforms designed to improve the lot of the ordinary soldier. One was to abandon the practice of posting pickets to police the soldiers when they were outside the base. Another was to improve sports facilities. His reforms earned many plaudits. Unlike many senior generals of the era, Smith-Dorrien could speak to troops with ease and was greatly admired by regimental officers. In pre-war training, he wanted individual initiative and intelligence in British soldiers. He later wrote, "One could never become an up-to-date soldier in the prehistoric warfare to be met with against the dervishes." He improved the frequency and methods of training in marksmanship of all soldiers. During this period, the higher ranks of the army were divided on the best use of cavalry. Smith-Dorrien, along with Lord Roberts, Sir Ian Hamilton and others, doubted that cavalry could often be used as cavalry, i.e., that they should still be trained to charge with sword and lance, instead thinking they would be more often deployed as mounted infantry, i.e., using horses for mobility but dismounting to fight. To this end, he took steps to improve the marksmanship of the cavalry. This did not endear him to the Army Blanche faction, which included French and Douglas Haig, and whose views prevailed after the retirement of Lord Roberts. Aylmer Haldane recorded that at the 1909 manoeuvres French was unfair in summing up for Paget against Smith-Dorrien. Smith-Dorrien annoyed French, with whom he had still been on relatively cordial terms at the end of the South African War, by abolishing the pickets which trawled the streets for drunk soldiers, by more than doubling the number of playing fields available to the men, by cutting down trees, and by building new and better barracks. On the 21st of August 1909 he lectured all his cavalry officers in the 16th Lancers Mess about the importance of improving the men's musketry. By 1910 the feud between French and Smith-Dorrien was common knowledge throughout the army. Smith-Dorrien, happily married to a young and pretty wife, objected to French's womanizing, and French's nephew later claimed to have overheard a ferocious exchange between them, in which Smith-Dorrien declared, "Too many whores around your headquarters, Field Marshal." He also tried to get the army to replace the old Maxim gun with the new Vickers Maxim gun, which weighed less than half as much and had a better water cooling system, but the War Office did not approve the expenditure. In 1911, he was made aide-de-camp to King George V. He was part of the King's Hunt in the Chitwan area of Nepal. On the 19th of December 1911, Smith-Dorrien killed a rhino and on the following day shot a bear. Southern Command. On 1 March 1912, he was appointed GOC Southern Command. At Southern Command he had jurisdiction over 12 counties and many regimental depots. He had experience of dealing with territorials for the first time and instigated training on fire and movement withdrawals which would also prove useful at Le Cateau. He was promoted to full general and raised to Knighthood Cross of the Order of the Bath in 1913. Although Smith-Dorrien was perfectly urbane and, by the standards of the day, kind-hearted towards his troops, he was notorious for furious outbursts of bad temper, which could last 4 hours before his equilibrium was restored. It has been suggested that the pain from a knee injury was one cause of his ill temper. It was rumored that Smith-Dorrien's temper was caused by some kind of serious illness. Isha had dined with Smith-Dorrien to see if he was indeed changed and weakened. Lord Crewe turned him down for the post of Commander-in-Chief India because of his foul temper. Unlike French, he was politically astute enough to avoid becoming entangled in the Curragh incident of 1914. Unlike a number of British generals of the era, Smith-Dorrien was not a political intriguer.